On the night of the fire they thought I'd burn for their sins. My sister's screams, my ex's lies, all aimed at framing me. But this time I wasn't the victim. I exposed them in front of the whole neighborhood, watched the truth go viral, and stood there as the police dragged them away. In my last life they destroyed me. In this one, I made sure they never got the chance. When I opened my eyes, the light in the room was too soft, too warm, too wrong. For one disoriented heartbeat, I thought I'd fallen asleep at the police station again, under the buzzing fluorescent lights that never shut off, waking to the sound of steel bars slamming shut in the distance. But there was no metal bed frame beneath me, no rough blanket that smelled of bleach and despair. Instead, my body was sunk into the familiar contours of my mattress, the cool sheets pressed against my skin. I stared up at the ceiling. The old chandelier light cast a golden hue across my room, brushing against the pale cream walls. My chest rose and fell too quickly, my heart battering my ribs like it wanted out. I bolted upright. My breath came fast, shallow. My hands went to my face. Smooth skin unburnt. My hair fell over my shoulders in glossy waves, carrying the faint lavender scent of the shampoo I'd used last night. Last night. That thought froze me. I turned my head, scanning every inch of my room. The same desk cluttered with books and highlighters. The framed photo of Mom and Dad at the county fair last summer. The slightly crooked painting I'd been meaning to fix for months. All exactly how it had been before. Before the fire. My pulse roared in my ears. It couldn't be. I swung my legs over the bed, my bare feet hitting the plush carpet. The softness under my toes should have comforted me, but instead, it sent a wave of nausea curling through my gut. Every detail felt real. Too real. My phone lit up on the nightstand. The name on the screen made my blood turn to ice. Sienna Blake. For a long moment I didn't move. The glow of her name against the black background was like a specter. My fingers hovered over the device, trembling before I finally swiped to answer. Hey Ava. Sienna's voice rang bright and cheerful, each syllable dipped in honey. Are you busy? I wanted to ask you something. The sound of her voice dragged me down into memories I'd fought to bury, memories that clawed their way up like hands from a grave. You're not gonna believe this, she continued without giving me a chance to speak. I'm throwing a little get-together tonight. Just a few friends, nothing crazy. But you know how Mom and Dad are. They hate the house getting messy. They never really understand me. My fingers curled into my palm. This call. These words. I knew them. Every single one. In my last life, this was the call that started it all. And, she added, voice brightening with faux innocence, I want some fireworks. Can you buy them for me? But don't tell Mom and Dad, okay? You're the best. You love me the most, right? You'd do anything for me. Especially something so small. The sugary cadence of her pleading scraped against my skin like sandpaper. In my last life I'd laughed. Said sure. Thought nothing of it. I'd been so quick to please her, so eager to be the good sister she could rely on. Her chatter rolled on, relentless. Oh. And you have to come to the party tonight. It'll be fun. You've been working so hard, you deserve a break. We'll have food, music. I promise it'll be worth it. She hung up before I could even form a word. The dial tone echoed in my ear, hollow and final. Slowly I lowered the phone, my reflection in the vanity mirror catching my eye. My forehead glistened with cold sweat. My eyes, wide, unblinking, looked like they belonged to a stranger. I knew what day it was. It was the day I died. When I was 5 years old, my parents adopted Sienna. I was too young to understand the wary glances from relatives, the whispered comments about bloodlines and outsiders. All I saw was a little girl with big brown eyes and a shy smile, clutching a worn teddy bear like it was her whole world. I treated her like she was my own flesh and blood. Shared my toys, my room, my secrets. Defended her when kids at school made comments about her being adopted. I thought we were sisters. Thought she loved me. But in my last life, this very day had been the turning point. The day her mask slipped and she plunged the knife into my back, smiling as she twisted it. That night, after she made this exact same call, I'd done exactly what she asked. I'd gone to the corner store, bought the fireworks, and told Dad everything was fine when he called to check in. When I came home, the house was already a roaring inferno. I could still smell the smoke in my hair, feel it burning my lungs. I could still hear the crackle of flames devouring the place we'd lived our whole lives. I'd stumbled inside, coughing, desperate to find anyone still trapped. I barely made it out alive. And then she came running, her face pale, tears streaming down her cheeks, the picture of grief. She grabbed my arm and screamed for everyone to hear. "Ava, why would you do this? You lit the fireworks. You killed Mom." The words had been like a guillotine. Dad arrived minutes later, his eyes red-rimmed, his expression unreadable until it hardened into something cold and final. "You told me everything was fine," he'd said. "Is this what you call fine?" Then Logan, my boyfriend, the man I thought I would marry, stepped forward. "She always does what she wants," he told my father. "I'm sure she lit them indoors. I saw her with the fireworks myself. Lies. All of it. But the crowd believed them. My father believed them. I was handcuffed in front of the neighbors I'd known my whole life. The whispers followed me into the police car. How could she do that? Poor Sienna. Killing her own mother? I went to prison. I withered there. The days bled into nights. The food turned to ash in my mouth. My health deteriorated, my skin paled, my spirit cracked. And just before the end, just before the darkness took me for good, I learned the truth. Sienna and Logan had been lovers for years. The fire wasn't an accident. It wasn't carelessness. It was murder, my murder. They wanted me gone so they could take everything my parents built. But they hadn't counted on Mom being home that night. When she died instead, they pivoted, framed me, walked free. And in their greed, Sienna went even further. She had her own biological mother kill my father to secure the rest of the inheritance. I took my last breath in that cell, alone, broken and burning with hatred. Yet here I was. Back in my room. Back in my body. Back before it all happened. A shiver ran through me, slow and deliberate, as though my soul was adjusting to the weight of this second chance. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, the world looked exactly as it had on that cursed day. Sunlight spilling over the neat rows of houses, the early summer air shimmering faintly with heat. A neighbor's lawn sprinkler ticked rhythmically, sending arcs of water glinting in the light. It was all so normal. So deceptively peaceful. But my life was no longer the same. I curled my fingers into fists, feeling my nails bite into my palms. This was no coincidence. No dream. No miracle without purpose. This was my chance. The faces of Sienna and Logan rose in my mind. Smiling, laughing, pretending to care. The same faces that had looked at me through the bars of a prison cell, eyes glittering with triumph as they flaunted their relationship in front of me. Not this time. This time I wouldn't be the trusting sister. I wouldn't be the oblivious girlfriend. I wouldn't be the perfect victim they could frame and discard. They had written the script in my last life. Now I would be the one holding the pen. I turned from the window, my mind already beginning to weave the outline of what needed to be done. My pulse slowed, steadied. The fear melted into something colder, sharper. They had wanted me gone so they could have everything. This time I would make sure they lost it all. I stopped there, letting the thought settle deep into my bones. Because the next step, taking my first move, would change everything. And I had no intention of rushing it. When I finally lay back down, my eyes remained wide open, fixed on the ceiling. Sleep was impossible. In my last life, this was the point where the trap was set for me. Not by accident, not by fate, but by the careful hands of Sienna Blake and Logan Pierce. This time I would be the one setting the trap. I replayed every detail I remembered from that day, lining them up in my mind like dominoes. My parents leaving early for work. Sienna calling in the afternoon with her sugary request for fireworks. Me agreeing. The fire. The crowd. The accusations. The police. If I made even one wrong move now, the domino chain would fall the same way again. I wasn't here to relive history. I was here to rewrite it. Step 1. Keep my parents far away from the house. In my last life, Mom had been unexpectedly home. This time she wouldn't be anywhere near Sienna's little party. I reached for my phone and dialed Mom's number. She answered almost immediately. "Sweetheart, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I said, forcing a bright tone. "Actually, I've got a surprise for you and Dad." "Oh." There was a smile in her voice already. "What kind of surprise?" I took a breath, then delivered the bait. "The Silver Keys are performing tonight in Harbor City. I got 3 tickets." There was a pause, brief but enough for me to picture her hand flying to her mouth. She'd been a fan of the Silver Keys since she was in her 20s. They almost never toured anymore, and when they did, tickets sold out in minutes. 3, she asked, almost breathless. You, me and Dad, I confirmed. We can stay overnight, make a little trip of it. Oh, Ava, she started, and I could hear the hesitation forming. Here it came. What about Sienna? I smiled without warmth. She told me she's staying overnight at school for a project. She won't even be home. Mom's relief was immediate, if a little too trusting. Well, if she's not going to be home, I'll talk to your father. We'll have to leave early to beat the traffic. I'll handle all the arrangements, I said. Just be ready. As soon as we hung up, I let the fake brightness drain from my voice. My reflection in the black phone screen stared back at me, colder, sharper. Step 2, bring in an uninvited guest. If Sienna wanted a party, she'd have one to remember. And I knew just the person to crash it. Someone who could tip the scales without even realizing it. I scrolled through my contacts until I found a number I hadn't dialed in years. Martha Hale. Martha was Sienna's biological mother. My parents had made an effort to keep her in Sienna's life. Occasional dinners, birthday invites. But the visits had fizzled out over time. Still, I remembered the way Martha's eyes softened whenever she looked at Sienna, and the way Sienna basked in that attention like a cat in the sun. The line clicked. Hello. Her voice was huskier than I remembered. Aunt Martha. I made my tone warm, affectionate. It's Ava Morgan. It's been a while. Oh, Ava. I haven't heard from you in ages. How are you? I'm doing well. I thought of you because I have a surprise. Sienna's throwing a party tonight. She misses you so much, and I thought, why not invite you? There was a smile in her voice immediately. Really? That girl's always so busy. I'd love to see her. I lowered my voice, adding a conspiratorial edge. But don't tell her you're coming. It'll be a bigger surprise if you just show up. She chuckled. All right, I won't say a word. Great. It starts around 8. Just come by then. When I hung up, I allowed myself a small, measured exhale. The pieces were falling into place. Step 3, my alibi. The concert would be perfect. Hundreds of people. Cameras everywhere. Ticket timestamps. Videos. Witnesses. Even if Sienna tried to spin her lies again, she wouldn't have a shred of evidence. In my last life, the lack of an alibi had been my undoing. This time my alibi would be bulletproof. I pulled up the ticketing site, my fingers steady as I bought 3 premium seats. I'd make sure to take photos with Mom and Dad at the venue, videos with the band in the background, even receipts from the hotel afterward. If Sienna thought she could corner me again in front of the neighbors, she'd find herself walking into a wall of proof instead. The rest of the afternoon passed slowly, every tick of the clock stretching thin with anticipation. I showered, dressed, and packed a small overnight bag. By the time Dad got home from work, Mom had already told him about the concert. He grumbled about the last-minute nature of it, but I could see the way his mouth softened when Mom said she'd been dreaming of seeing the band live again. At 6 o'clock we were in the car, the road stretching ahead toward Harbor City. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in streaks of gold and rose, I allowed myself one last glance back at the past. The house we were leaving behind sat innocently in the distance, its white siding catching the light, the front porch bathed in shadow. It looked peaceful. It wouldn't stay that way. I could almost picture it. Sienna laughing in the kitchen, her friends crowding the living room, the faint sulfur tang of fireworks mixing with the smell of alcohol. And Martha Hale walking through the door, unaware she'd been invited by me, unprepared for what the night would bring. My lips curved, not in joy but in something colder. This time I wasn't the one walking into the fire. This time I was the one holding the match. By the time we reached Harbor City, the streets were alive with the hum of weekend energy. Restaurants spilled light and chatter onto the sidewalks. Street performers played for passing crowds. And in the heart of it all stood the Harbor Arena, its glass facade lit from within, the band's name flashing across the marquee. Mom's eyes sparkled as we walked up. I can't believe you pulled this off, Ava, she said, squeezing my hand. Dad nodded, though his approval was more subdued. It's been a long time since we did something like this. Inside, the roar of the crowd swallowed our voices. I made sure to take photos immediately, one of us together, one of Mom and Dad with the stage behind them. I even filmed a short clip as the opening act played, zooming in on the tickets in our hands. Every bit of it was insurance. The concert itself was electric. Mom sang along to every song, her voice bright with nostalgia. Even Dad tapped his foot and cracked a smile during the encore. I clapped and cheered with them, but a part of my mind was far away, picturing what was unfolding back home. Somewhere just hours from here, Sienna was surrounded by her chosen audience. The same kind of crowd she'd once used to condemn me. She'd be laughing, pretending to be the perfect hostess. And Martha would be there now, maybe hugging her, maybe surprising her in front of her friends. I wondered when the first whiff of smoke would thread through the night. After the show, we checked into a small hotel a few blocks away. I took more photos. Us at the check-in desk, Mom holding the room keys, even the receipt. I knew I wouldn't need this much evidence, but I wanted to smother every possible angle Sienna could try to use. As I lay in the hotel bed later, listening to the muffled city sounds through the window, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This was it. The plan was in motion. I'd set the pieces exactly where I wanted them. Tomorrow the fire would still happen. The police would still come. But this time the wrong person wouldn't be standing in handcuffs. This time Sienna Blake would choke on her own lies. And Logan Pierce, well, he was about to find out exactly what it felt like to back the wrong woman. By the time the hotel alarm rang the next morning, I was already awake. Sleep had come in short, restless bursts. My mind had kept wandering back to that house, picturing the blaze in all its orange, devouring rage. I wasn't afraid of what I'd find, not anymore. I was prepared. We checked out just after sunrise, grabbing coffee from the lobby and piling into the car. Dad drove, his focus on the road, while Mom hummed softly to herself in the passenger seat. Neither of them knew that by the time we got home, our lives would be standing at a crossroads, one that I had laid out for us in meticulous detail. As we neared our street, a dark smear rose in the distance. Smoke. Not a thin, drifting line from someone's chimney, thick, heavy, clinging to the morning air. Mom's humming stopped. Is that? Dad's hands tightened on the wheel. The closer we got, the clearer it became. Blackened wood. A twisted railing. Char marks crawling up the white siding like ink stains. The fire was already out, but the damage was unmistakable. Dad pulled the car into the driveway across the street. Before he could even kill the engine, I unbuckled my seatbelt. I'll go check, I said quickly. He opened his mouth to protest, but I was already out of the car, my boots crunching against broken glass scattered on the pavement. Even from the sidewalk I could see the devastation. The front windows had been blown out, jagged shards still clinging to the frames. The porch steps were blackened, one side caved in. The air was thick with the acrid stench of wet ash and smoke. A knot of neighbors had gathered, some murmuring to each other, others openly gawking. And in the middle of them, just as I knew she would be, was Sienna. Her hair was a wild halo around her face, her cheeks streaked with soot and tears. She spotted me instantly, her eyes widening in a perfect imitation of shock before she hurried toward me. Ava. Her voice cracked on my name. How could you? She lunged forward, grabbing my arm so tightly it hurt. How could you do this? She cried, voice pitched high enough to draw every pair of eyes in the crowd. You lit the fireworks inside. I told you not to. Mom. Her voice broke into a sob. Mom's dead because of you. I met her gaze and let the silence stretch between us, my expression perfectly blank. I didn't do anything, I said evenly. Her tears spilled faster. You liar. You've always hated me. You've always been jealous because Mom and Dad loved me more. She whirled toward the onlookers, her voice rising. You all know how she is, she never listens to anyone. And now, she pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, letting the implication hang in the smoky air. Murmurs rippled through the group. Did she say fireworks? God, that's so reckless. Poor Sienna. Losing her mom like that. I heard every whisper, but none of it touched me. And then right on cue, Logan appeared. He strode across the lawn with the practiced urgency of a man who wanted to look like a hero. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair slightly mussed, the kind of disheveled that took effort to perfect. Ava. His voice was low, heavy with disappointment. Tell me this isn't true. I didn't answer. She told me, he went on, glancing toward Sienna. She begged you not to light them inside. But you didn't listen. You've always been stubborn like that. He shook his head slowly, like he was grieving the person he thought I was. The Ava I fell in love with was better than this. There was the same script as last time, word for word. The crowd's whispers swelled. A woman near the back actually gasped. I stood still, my hands hanging loose at my sides. I wasn't here, I said simply. Sienna's face twisted in something that was part fury, part disbelief. You're still lying, she demanded. You're not even going to apologize? For something I didn't do? No. Logan stepped closer, dropping his voice to something meant to sound intimate. Ava, just admit it. We'll go to the police together. I'll be with you every step of the way. But if you keep lying... He let the sentence trail off like a threat wrapped in concern. I almost smiled. He still thought this was the same game as before, that my silence meant guilt, that his fake sympathy could bend me. The crowd shifted as a few more neighbors arrived, drawn by the smell and the promise of drama. A man in a baseball cap asked, "So who's saying she lit fireworks?" Sienna turned to him instantly. "I'm saying it. I saw her bring them in." "She? You saw me bring them in?" I cut in, my tone cool but loud enough for everyone to hear. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, just enough to catch. "Yes," she said, recovering quickly. "I saw you with my own eyes." Interesting. So she was committing to the lie in front of witnesses. Before I could speak again, someone called my name. I turned to see a figure cutting through the crowd. Dad. His face was pale, his jaw clenched tight. "What happened?" he asked, his voice carrying over the murmur. Sienna was on him in an instant, clutching his arm like a lifeline. "Dad." Ava set off fireworks in the house. I told her not to, but she wouldn't listen. The fire, her voice cracked and she pressed her face into his sleeve. Mom was trapped inside. Dad's eyes flicked to me, searching. I met his gaze and didn't look away. "I wasn't here," I said again. But before Dad could reply, Logan slid in beside Sienna. "Sir, I'm sorry, but I have to tell you the truth. He brought the fireworks. She lit them. We told her to stop. If she'd just listened." Dad's gaze shifted from me to them and I saw something there. Not belief, not quite doubt, but calculation. The murmuring crowd leaned in, eager for the verdict. The smell of wet ash hung heavy between us, coating every breath. "Enough," Dad said sharply. Sienna froze, still gripping his arm. "Dad." I said enough. His voice could have cut glass. He looked down at her, his expression unreadable. "We'll talk about this when your mother gets here." "Mom." Sienna's voice faltered. "She's on her way," Dad said flatly. That single sentence landed like a stone dropped into water, sending ripples through the air. I watched the color drain from Sienna's face. The crowd began whispering again, some glancing toward the road as if expecting to see my mother materialize out of the smoke. And in that moment I saw it. The first crack in Sienna's mask. She hadn't expected Mom to be alive. I held her gaze, my lips curling just slightly. The game had only just begun. This time I wasn't going to wait to be backed into a corner. This time I would drag them into the open, strip away every carefully rehearsed lie, and watch as the people they'd fooled turned on them. And I would enjoy every second of it. The hum of murmurs in the crowd was sharp, like the buzzing of hornets. People turned their heads toward the street every time a car passed, craning to see if it might be her. The woman Sienna had just spent the last 20 minutes declaring dead. I watched Sienna's fingers tighten on Dad's arm. She was still trying to look distraught, but her grip had shifted. Less of a desperate daughter clinging to her father, more of a drowning woman grabbing for anything solid before she sank. And then the sound came, the slam of a car door, the brisk rhythm of heels on asphalt. "Ava." "Robert." My mother's voice. Every head turned as if pulled by invisible strings. And there she was, Olivia Morgan, my mother, alive and unscathed, carrying 2 reusable grocery bags like she'd just come from the store. She froze at the sight of the crowd, the scorched house, the police tape curling in the morning breeze. "What's going on here?" she asked, her eyes darting from me to Sienna to the ruined front porch. The shock on the crowd's faces was almost satisfying enough to make me forget the stink of wet ash. Almost. Sienna went rigid. Her wide eyes locked onto Mom as if she'd seen a ghost. For a second, her lips parted soundlessly. Then, in the performance of a lifetime, she dropped Dad's arm and ran toward her. "Mom!" she cried, her voice breaking. She flung herself at Olivia, nearly sending the grocery bags spilling. "You're alive," I thought. Her breath hitched, catching on a sob that would have been convincing if I hadn't already seen the panic flicker behind her eyes. I thought you were. Mom gently pushed her back, her brows knitting. Sienna, why would you think I was dead? Sienna's gaze darted toward the sheet-covered shape still lying near the lawn, the one the fire department hadn't yet moved. They said the body. They. Mom echoed, her voice cooling. Her gaze swept the crowd. Who exactly said that body was mine? Sienna's eyes flicked in my direction, then toward Logan, then back to Mom. I must have been mistaken. Mistaken. Dad's voice cut in hard as stone. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. A few people whispered to each other. Wait, so the mom isn't dead? She's right there. Then why was the girl saying? Logan stepped forward like he was trying to reclaim control of the narrative. Mrs. Morgan, I'm glad you're all right. He faltered as Dad turned the full weight of his stare on him. Don't, Dad said, the single word heavy enough to silence him. Mom turned to me. Ava, tell me exactly what happened. So I did. I told her everything in a calm, steady voice, my words carrying over the crackle of shifting feet and the occasional snap of police radio static. I didn't embellish, didn't raise my voice. I just laid out the facts, each one like a brick building a wall between me and their lies. When I finished, Mom's face was pale, but her eyes were sharp. She looked at Sienna. Is this true? Sienna's breath came quick. No, she's twisting it. Mom, I swear she what? Mom asked, her voice still low but edged with steel. She wasn't even here, Sienna. She was with us last night. That doesn't mean. It means you lied, Dad interrupted, his voice booming now, the restraint he'd shown before starting to crack. Sienna's bottom lip trembled, but I could see the calculation in her eyes, the frantic shuffling of excuses, the desperate search for a way to flip this back on me. She did commit murder, she blurted suddenly. Maybe not Mom, but someone died in there. You have to believe me. Logan nodded quickly, seizing on the lifeline. Exactly. The victim wasn't your mother, but Ava still started the fire. That hasn't changed. There was the pivot. They couldn't pin my mother's death on me, so now they'd aim for a stranger's. I let out a low laugh. You two really don't know when to quit. The crowd reacted, a ripple of murmurs, a few outright chuckles. Someone whispered, why's her boyfriend defending the sister so much? And another hissed, something's off here. Dad took a step toward Logan. And you, he said, his voice deep and cold. What exactly is your place in all this? Logan swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. I'm just trying to support. Support who? My daughter? Or Sienna? Dad's eyes narrowed and Logan's gaze skittered away. Sienna's breathing quickened. Dad, please. Don't make this about. This is about the fact, Dad said sharply, that you stood in front of our house, in front of our neighbors, and told them your mother was dead when she was standing in a hotel room with me and your sister. Gasps from the crowd. Someone muttered, she's done for. Mom's voice was quieter, but it cut just as deep. We treated you like our own, Sienna. We gave you everything you needed, everything you asked for. And this is what you do with it. Sienna's tears came faster now, not the neat, camera-ready ones from before, but messy, panicked streaks down her cheeks. I didn't mean. Yes, you did, Dad said. The crowd had gone still, watching the slow dismantling of Sienna Blake. The girl who'd been so quick to perform grief and outrage was now reduced to stammering half-sentences, her eyes darting like a cornered animal's. But even in that moment I knew she wasn't finished. Sienna Blake didn't back down. She changed tactics. You're just protecting her because she's your real daughter, she shouted suddenly, voice cracking. You've never treated me the same. You've always taken her side no matter what she does. A murmur rolled through the onlookers. She's adopted? No wonder. Dad's chest heaved. You ungrateful. He stopped himself, his hands curling into fists at his sides. Don't you dare twist this into some sob story about being treated unfairly. This is about the lies you told, the harm you caused, and the people you tried to destroy. Sienna's chin wobbled, but her eyes blazed. I'm not lying. Someone died in there, and Ava. Enough. Mom snapped. That single word was louder than anything else she'd said, and it froze Sienna mid-breath. Even Logan seemed to shrink back. We're going to let the police handle this, Mom said, her voice trembling with controlled fury. And if you're smart, Sienna, you'll keep your mouth shut until they get here. The police officer who'd been lingering near the curb finally stepped forward, clearly having heard enough to know this wasn't a simple case of accidental fireworks. His gaze flicked between the four of us before settling on Sienna. "Miss, I'm going to need you to stay right here until we take your statement." Sienna's mouth opened like she was about to argue, but one look at Dad's face must have convinced her otherwise. I stood a few feet away, my arms loosely folded, watching as the cracks in their story spread wider and deeper. They were on the defensive now. The more they scrambled, the more obvious their desperation became. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to accuse. I just had to let them talk. Because every word they spoke was digging the grave they'd buried for me in my last life. Only this time it was theirs. The wail of a siren cut through the thick morning air, scattering the last of the murmurs from the crowd. It was sharp, urgent, and for the first time in 2 lives I felt no fear when I heard it. 2 patrol cars pulled up in quick succession, lights flashing against the blackened husk of our house. The crowd instinctively parted, giving the officers a clear path to the curb. A tall man in uniform stepped out first, his badge catching the weak sunlight. He had the calm, unreadable face of someone who'd seen far worse scenes than this, but his eyes were alert, scanning everything. The wreckage, the sheet-covered body, the 3 of us standing with my parents, and the dozens of neighbors watching with bated breath. "Officer Grant." He introduced himself, speaking to my father first. "Who made the call?" Sienna's hand shot up before Dad could open his mouth. "I did," she said, her voice breaking on cue. "I need to report a murder. My sister, she set off fireworks in the house. I told her not to, but she wouldn't listen, and now," she gestured toward the body with a trembling hand. "An innocent person is dead." Gasps rippled through the crowd again. Officer Grant's gaze shifted to me. "Is that true?" "No," I said, my tone steady. Sienna whirled toward me, her voice going shrill. "She's lying. She's been lying since the moment she got here." Grant raised a hand, signaling for quiet. "Miss, where were you last night?" The question was so familiar it almost made me laugh. In my last life, this was where I'd stumbled, where I'd had nothing to give but my own word, which counted for less than nothing against Sienna's crocodile tears and Logan's fabricated testimony. But this time, I'd come prepared. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. "Officer," I said clearly, making sure my voice carried to the crowd, "I wasn't home last night. I was out of town with my parents, attending a concert in Harbor City." Without waiting for him to ask, I tapped the screen and opened the gallery. Here's the video I took when we arrived. The time and date stamp are visible. That's my mother and father standing beside me. I swiped again. Here's the band performing with me and my parents in the frame. Here's the receipt for the hotel we stayed in overnight. And here's the digital ticket purchase confirmation from yesterday morning. Grant took the phone and scrolled through the evidence, his brows lowering in concentration. Behind him, a uniformed officer peered over his shoulder. When they finally looked up, their expressions had changed. Subtle but noticeable. "So you can confirm your whereabouts from last night until this morning?" Grant asked. "Yes," I said. "And my parents can corroborate." Dad nodded sharply. "She was with us the entire time." Grant turned to Sienna. "Do you have any proof she was at the scene during the fire?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The silence was deafening. Then, like the turning of a tide, the mood in the crowd began to shift. Wait, if she wasn't even here, then why would the sister say she was? That's a serious accusation. Sienna's eyes darted wildly from face to face, searching for someone to save her. Finally, they landed on Logan. He stepped forward quickly, trying to sound authoritative. "We know she was here because..." "Because what?" I cut in smoothly. His jaw tightened. "Because Sienna saw her." "You mean because Sienna told you she saw me?" Logan's mouth snapped shut. I took a step closer, my gaze locking on both of them. "Funny," I said, my voice still calm but carrying an edge sharp enough to slice through the smoke. "You've spent the last half hour telling everyone you saw me light fireworks, that I started the fire. But you can't prove it. And now there's proof I wasn't even here." Sienna's mouth worked soundlessly. Logan's face was beginning to flush. "Which makes me wonder," I continued, letting my voice rise just enough for the crowd to lean in, "why you've been so eager to back each other up. Why you never once hesitated to throw me under the bus. Why..." I paused deliberately, my eyes narrowing. You seem to know each other's lies so well. A low ripple went through the crowd. People leaned closer. Some exchanged knowing glances. I took another step forward. You see, one is my sister. The other is the man I've loved for years. I trusted both of you. And in return, I let the silence stretch before dropping the hammer. You've been sleeping together behind my back. The reaction was instant. Gasps. Sharp intakes of breath. A woman near the front clapped her hand over her mouth. Someone in the back muttered, I knew something was off about them. Sienna's face went chalk white. Logan's eyes widened, then narrowed in a glare that would have been menacing if he didn't look so exposed. That's not, Sienna started, but her voice cracked. Logan tried to regain control. Ava, that's... Don't, I said, my voice suddenly sharp. Don't insult everyone here by pretending it's not true. You've made it obvious for months, maybe not to me before but to everyone else now. The murmurs in the crowd turned uglier. That's disgusting. With her own sister? And she's accusing Ava of murder? Dad's face darkened, his gaze swinging between the two of them. Is this true? Neither of them answered. That was answer enough. You shameless little bastard, he snarled at Logan. Cheating on my daughter, lying in front of my house and siding with... He didn't finish. His fist shot out, catching Logan square on the jaw. The crowd erupted, some in shock, others in open approval. Logan stumbled back, clutching his face, eyes watering. Robert. Mom's voice was sharp, but she didn't step in to stop him. She turned her fury on Sienna instead. And you, after everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Sienna's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't the smooth, stage-ready drops she'd deployed earlier. These were messy, panicked, and entirely unplanned. Grant stepped forward again, his voice cutting through the noise. All right, that's enough. This is now a formal investigation. Miss Blake, Mr. Pierce, I'm going to need both of you to come with us for questioning. The crowd fell silent again, the tension humming in the air. Sienna's breath hitched audibly. Logan's jaw worked as if he wanted to argue, but one glance at the officers told him it would be pointless. I stood very still, letting the scene sink in. In my last life, this was the moment they'd hauled me away while Sienna and Logan stood arm in arm, playing the grieving survivors. Now the roles were reversed. And I had no intention of letting them wriggle out of it. The moment Officer Grant told them to come to the station, I saw it, that flicker of naked panic in Sienna's eyes. In my last life, she had been triumphant at this stage, watching me get taken away in handcuffs, whispering sweet consolations to Logan in front of everyone. Now she was the one cornered and the walls were closing in fast. I'm not going anywhere, she blurted, shaking her head so violently that strands of hair stuck to her tear-streaked cheeks. I didn't do anything. Why should I go? Grant's tone stayed even. Because you've been identified as the person who made the report, and there are inconsistencies we need to clear up. This isn't optional, Miss Blake. She backed away half a step, clutching her arms as if to shield herself from the weight of the stares pressing in from every side. No, you don't understand. Then help us understand, I said smoothly, my voice carrying just enough for the crowd to hear. Where were you last night? Sienna froze. The murmurs in the crowd sharpened. Yeah, where was she? She's the one who said she was home. What if she's the one who? Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gulping at air. Finally she managed, I was here hosting the party. But that doesn't mean. Hosting the party, I repeated as if tasting the words. So you were in the house when the fire started. That's not... She faltered again and the whispers grew louder. Officer Grant stepped in. Miss Blake, we're asking you to cooperate. If you refuse to come voluntarily, we'll have to escort you. The word escort landed like a physical blow. I saw her knees weaken. Her eyes darted desperately to the one person she thought might still protect her. Dad, she cried, lurching forward and clutching his arm. Dad, please. Don't let them take me. I didn't mean. The crowd collectively inhaled at those 3 words. Didn't mean? Dad's face was carved from granite. Didn't mean what, Sienna? Her grip on him tightened until her knuckles went white. Please, I'll apologize to Ava. I'll tell everyone I was wrong. Just don't let them take me to the station. Please. The whispers turned into a steady rumble. She's begging not to go? Sounds guilty to me. Why apologize if you didn't do anything? She's cracking. Mom's eyes were red, but her voice was ice. Don't call me Mom right now. You know exactly how we treated you. We gave you everything. Never once did we make you feel less than family. And this is how you repay us. I'm sorry. Sienna sobbed, collapsing to her knees right there on the pavement. I swear I'll change. I can't go to jail. Grant exchanged a glance with his partner. The partner muttered something under his breath, probably noting that she just admitted jail was a legitimate possibility. I stepped forward, looking down at her. If you're innocent, you have nothing to fear. Her head snapped up, eyes wild. Shut up. I didn't kill anyone. I tilted my head, letting a slow, knowing smile curl my lips. Funny. I never said you did. The gasp that rippled through the crowd was delicious. Sienna's breathing turned ragged. You're twisting everything. I didn't. You hosted the party, I cut in again. You were here when the fire started. You accused me without checking who the victim even was. If I hadn't had proof, you might have succeeded in framing me, again. Her face drained of color. The tension snapped taut as a drum's skin. Every eye was on her now. What does she mean again? Someone whispered. There's more to this. This whole thing's rotten. Logan, who'd been unusually quiet since Dad's punch, finally stepped forward, his voice rising. Enough. She's upset, she's scared, and you're all acting like a pack of wolves. Ava, stop this. She's your sister. Half-sister, I said coldly. By adoption. And you, Logan? You lost the right to speak to me when you decided she was worth betraying me for. The murmurs swelled again, and I saw Logan's jaw tighten. He glanced at Sienna, but she was too wrapped in her own panic to notice. Grant's voice cut back in. Miss Blake. Mr. Pierce. Last chance to come voluntarily. I said I'm not going. Sienna's voice cracked so high it almost sounded like a scream. She clutched at Dad's leg now, tears dripping onto the pavement. Dad, please. I was wrong. I'll say whatever you want me to say, just. Another collective gasp from the crowd. You hear that? She'll say whatever you want? That's not how an innocent person talks. Dad looked down at her with something between disgust and pity. Get up, he said flatly. You're making a spectacle of yourself. She shook her head violently. I can't. They'll twist everything I say. They. I said, my voice as sharp as a blade. Or you. That did it. She flinched like my words had cut straight through to the bone. Her lips trembled, but no more excuses came out. Grant nodded once to his partner. All right. We'll do this the hard way. The partner stepped forward, but before he could reach her, Sienna jerked upright. Fine. I'll go. But I'm not saying anything without a lawyer. The crowd reacted again, some shaking their heads, others outright scoffing. As the officers began to guide her toward the patrol car, she twisted back to glare at me over her shoulder. You think this is over? It's not. You've always had everything handed to you, Ava. But one day, I interrupted, you'll realize that the only thing you've ever had is the mess you made for yourself. Grant turned to Logan. You're coming too. Logan stiffened, his voice dripping indignation. Why? I didn't do anything. You're a witness and you've been implicated in making false statements. We have questions. The crowd parted as the two of them were led toward separate patrol cars. Phones came out, recording every second. I stood very still watching. In my last life, I'd been the one walking that path, feeling every eye burn into my back, hearing the whispers. Now it was their turn to feel the weight of public judgment, the cold truth settling over them like chains. And I intended to make sure those chains never came off. The officers had barely reached the curb with Sienna and Logan when another uniform approached Officer Grant, leaning in to speak low enough that only a few of us could hear. His words were drowned out by the crowd's murmuring, until Grant's expression shifted just slightly to something harder, more deliberate. He straightened and raised his voice for everyone to hear. We've identified the victim, he announced. Her name was Martha Hale. 45 years old. The name rippled through me like an electric current, and then the crowd, but it was Sienna who reacted like she'd been hit by a truck. Her head snapped up, eyes wide, her entire body going rigid in the officer's grip. No, she breathed, shaking her head. No, that's not. I let my voice carry over her sputtering. Martha Hale, isn't that your biological mother, Sienna? Gasps erupted. Faces turned toward her in shock, others twisting in disgust. I took a small step forward, my tone deceptively mild. So, you set the fire, killed someone, and didn't even bother to check who it was. The crowd's reaction was instant and vicious. Her real mom. Oh my God. That's sick. Sienna's knees buckled, and the officers holding her arm had to catch her to keep her from collapsing fully. She lurched toward the sheet-covered body, yanking at their grip. Let me see her. Let me. They let her get close enough to lift the sheet. The moment she saw the scorched face underneath, she let out a wail so sharp it cut through every other sound on the street. Mom. No. How could this? Her voice broke into raw sobs and she clutched at the sheet like she could pull Martha back to life. Logan stood frozen, his mouth half open. It was her real mom, he muttered as though the thought had just registered. I smiled, cold, sharp, merciless. Guess your plan didn't go quite the way you wanted. His head whipped toward me, fury flaring in his eyes. Shut your mouth. I tilted my head, feigning innocence. Why should I? You're the ones who committed murder and tried to frame me. And now that you've killed the wrong person, you still think you have the right to yell at me. The crowd was eating it up. Someone near the back called out, "Yeah, you tell them, Ava." And another added, "Lock them both up already." But Logan's face changed in a way that made every hair on my neck stand up. The heat in his gaze turned wild, desperate. In the space of a breath, he broke free from the officer beside him, lunging toward me. I had just enough time to take a step back before his hand clamped down around my neck. The world seemed to tilt. A chorus of shouts erupted. The crowd stumbled backward, clearing space as Logan yanked me in front of him, his forearm locking tight across my chest. In his other hand, a flash of metal, a small folding knife he must have had hidden in his pocket, gleamed wickedly in the sunlight. He pressed the blade against my neck just enough for me to feel the bite of cold steel. "Nobody moves," he roared, his voice cracking with panic. "You come any closer and I'll..." Dad's voice exploded from somewhere behind the police line. "Logan, are you out of your damn mind? Let go of her." Mom's cry cut through me, raw and terrified. "Ava." I forced myself to keep breathing, slow and steady, my eyes locked on the crowd instead of the knife. In my last life, I'd died long before anything like this could happen. But now I knew Logan's desperation, his cowardice. If he felt cornered, he'd lash out like a trapped animal, even at me. And right now he was cornered. "This is all your fault," he shouted at the officers, dragging me backward a few steps. "You and your stupid questions, you pushed me to this." From somewhere to my right, Sienna's voice rang out, hysterical, unhinged. "Don't just stand there. Get us out of here. Ava won't let us go, so we won't let her go either." Her words dripped with venom, but they also told me something important. She was every bit as desperate as Logan now. The officers had frozen, hands up, trying not to escalate him further. "Logan," Officer Grant said, his voice slow and deliberate, "listen to me. You're already in serious trouble. Don't make it worse. Let her go and we'll talk." "No," he barked. "You give me a car and you let me take Sienna and we drive away from here. Nobody follows us." I could feel his pulse hammering through the arm clamped across me, the jerky, frantic rhythm of a man barely holding himself together. The knife shifted slightly against my skin, the edge just grazing enough to leave a faint sting. I kept my breathing even though my mind was already scanning for an opening. Any opening. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of one of the other officers circling behind the patrol car, moving low, keeping to the blind spot of Logan's frantic gaze. Another officer, younger, leaner, was easing closer on my left, his eyes locked on Logan's knife hand. I needed to give them time. "Logan," I said quietly, forcing him to hear me over the ringing panic in his ears. "If you hurt me, it's over for you. Do you understand? You won't walk away from it. You won't get to protect Sienna. You'll just be one more loser rotting in a cell." "Shut up," he snarled, tightening his grip. "You think you're better than us? You think you can just destroy everything we worked for? You mean everything you stole?" I shot back. His breath went hot against my ear. "You never deserved it. Sienna and we were going to have it all." The younger officer had edged a step closer. I shifted slightly in Logan's hold, just enough to make him adjust the knife. And in that moment I slid my hand toward the small crossbody bag at my side. Inside, my fingers brushed the hard plastic cylinder I'd slipped in before leaving for the concert. Pepper spray. 1 step. 2 steps. The young officer was nearly in range. Logan noticed the shift in the crowd and jerked me back another step, his knife hand twitching. "Stay back," he roared again. "I swear I'll." That was his mistake. The twitch loosened his grip on my neck just enough for me to duck my chin and pull the spray free in one swift motion. I jammed the nozzle upward and pressed. The fine mist hit him square in the eyes. He screamed, a raw animal sound, releasing me instantly to claw at his burning face. The knife clattered to the pavement. The officers moved as one. The young one tackled him from the side. Another wrenched his arms behind his back. Someone kicked the knife away. I staggered forward, gulping in air, my neck throbbing where the blade had kissed it. The crowd erupted again, but this time it was a different sound. Relief, triumph, and unfiltered judgment aimed at Logan and Sienna. Coward. Going after her with a knife? Pathetic. They're both finished. Sienna, seeing Logan pinned to the ground, let out a shriek and tried to run, but the officer beside her yanked her back with ease, snapping handcuffs around her wrists. "Let me go. He's blind, he needs me," she howled, but no one moved to help. I stood there, catching my breath, my hands steady now. The adrenaline was still hot in my blood, but the fear had burned away. In my last life they'd taken everything from me. This time they'd been the ones dragged into the dirt, exposed in front of everyone who mattered. And it wasn't over yet. By the time Logan and Sienna were shoved into separate patrol cars, the street looked like the aftermath of a parade. People everywhere, phones out, the buzz of excited conversation mixing with the sharp clicks of camera shutters. I stood just beyond the police tape, arms folded, watching as they were loaded into the vehicles. My neck still throbbed faintly where the knife had pressed moments ago, but I refused to touch it. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of thinking they'd left a lasting mark. The first video hit social media before the patrol cars even pulled away. Someone had caught the entire sequence. Sienna's hysterics, my calm confrontation, the revelation of Martha Hale's identity, Logan's desperate hostage grab, and the takedown. By the time I got home, my phone was vibrating constantly with notifications. Texts from friends, messages from classmates, even people I hadn't spoken to in years. All sending variations of the same thing. "Is this you? Ava, you're trending. Holy crap, you handled that like a boss." I didn't bother answering them all. Instead, I sat on the couch between my parents, letting the reality of it sink in. By evening, every major news outlet had picked it up. The headlines were merciless. The adopted daughter and boyfriend attempt to frame sister for fire, kill biological mother instead. A hostage drama in quiet suburb ends with arrests. She saved herself. Woman escapes knife-wielding ex-boyfriend. Clips of Sienna's breakdown played on loop, her voice shaking as she begged not to be taken to the station. Logan's wild-eyed glare, his shouting the moment I blasted him with pepper spray, all of it was immortalized online. The comments were overwhelmingly one-sided. "You can't fake that kind of guilt. She knew she was caught. Logan's a coward. Imagine threatening someone with a knife in broad daylight. Ava's a queen for keeping her cool." That night, Dad called a family meeting. There was no ceremony to it, just the three of us at the kitchen table, the faint hum of the fridge filling the silence. "I've already spoken to the police," Dad began. "They have enough to charge both of them with multiple counts. Premeditated murder, conspiracy, false reporting, assault." He trailed off, his jaw tightening. "It's bad for them. And it's not going to get better." Mom's hands were wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking from. "There's no coming back from this. Not for them. And not for us if we let them near our lives again." I looked between them, waiting. Dad's gaze met mine. "We're done, Ava. To both of them. They're not welcome here, not now, not ever again." Relief loosened something in my chest that I hadn't realized was still clenched tight. "Good," I said simply. "That's exactly how it should be." 2 days later, the news broke that Logan was dead. He tried to escape during a transfer between holding cells, shoved one of the officers, made a run for it. He didn't get far. One of the guards tackled him. In the struggle, Logan's head hit the concrete hard enough to fracture his skull. He never regained consciousness. The media spun it as another twist in an already sordid story. I didn't post anything, didn't speak to reporters, didn't offer condolences. Logan Pierce had taken every ounce of trust I'd once had in him and turned it into a weapon against me. If I felt anything at his death, it was a detached acknowledgement that the world was, perhaps, a little safer without him in it. Sienna's trial began 3 months later. By then the public fascination had cooled into something sharper. A need for justice. The prosecution painted her as a manipulative schemer who'd tried to erase me from the picture entirely. The defense tried to frame it as a tragic accident, a poor judgment call by a young woman in over her head. The jury didn't buy it. Guilty on all counts. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for at least 25 years. When the verdict was read, she didn't look at me. She stared straight ahead, her expression eerily blank. Like if she didn't acknowledge me, she could pretend I wasn't the one who'd lived while she'd fallen. The house felt lighter without their presence. My parents and I settled into a rhythm again, slowly rebuilding the trust that had been strained by years of Sienna's quiet manipulations. I went back to school, finished my degree, started working at a firm in the city. People still recognized me sometimes, the girl from the hostage video. But the attention faded faster than I expected. The real victory wasn't in the headlines or the viral clips. It was in walking into my own life every morning without feeling like I had to look over my shoulder. One sunny afternoon nearly a year later, I found myself walking past the cemetery. I hadn't planned to stop, but my feet carried me there anyway. Martha Hale's grave was small, the grass around it neatly trimmed. I stood there for a long moment, not sure if I was there for her or for myself. "I don't know if you would have been any better to me than Sienna was," I said quietly. "But you didn't deserve the way you died. And I didn't deserve what they tried to do to me." I left a single white lily on the grave and walked away without looking back. That night I sat on my balcony, the city lights stretching out in front of me. For the first time in 2 lifetimes my heart was still. They were gone. Their lies, their schemes, their poison, none of it could touch me anymore. I'd been reborn into a second chance, and I'd used it to take back everything they'd stolen. And as the warm night breeze carried the faint hum of traffic up to where I sat, I knew one thing for certain. The shadows of my past no longer owned me. I was free. The end.